The morning sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Clarence House as Detective Inspector Sarah Matthews received what would become one of the most unusual calls of her career. At exactly 8:47 a.m. on a crisp Tuesday in March, the Metropolitan Police received a report that would send shockwaves through the highest levels of British society. Camilla Parker Bowles, the Duchess of Cornwall, had been attending a charity breakfast at a local community center when palace security received an anonymous tip. The caller, speaking in hushed tones, claimed to possess information about stolen royal artifacts hidden within the Duchess's private residence. The voice was distorted, clearly disguised, but the caller provided specific details that caught the attention of Palace Security Chief Commander James Whitmore. The tip mentioned precise locations within Clarence House, room numbers that weren't public knowledge, and descriptions of items that made Whitmore's blood run cold. The caller spoke of ceremonial robes, ancient crowns, priceless jewels that belonged to the Crown Estate. Most disturbing was the mention of Queen Elizabeth II's personal coronation robe, a garment that had been reported missing from the Tower of London's secure storage facility 6 months earlier. Commander Whitmore had served the royal family for over 2 decades. He had weathered scandals, security breaches, and countless false alarms. But something about this call felt different. The caller's knowledge was too specific, too detailed to dismiss as another crank call from someone seeking attention or trying to cause trouble for the monarchy. Within 30 minutes of receiving the tip, Whitmore had assembled a discreet team of royal protection officers and contacted the Metropolitan Police. The situation required delicate handling. Any investigation involving a member of the royal family needed to be conducted with absolute discretion to avoid damaging the monarchy's reputation or causing unnecessary embarrassment to the Duchess. Detective Inspector Matthews, known for her professionalism and ability to handle sensitive cases, was selected to lead the investigation. At 42 years old, she had built a reputation for thoroughness and discretion during her 15-year career with the Met. She had previously worked on cases involving high-profile individuals and understood the importance of maintaining confidentiality while pursuing the truth. The initial briefing took place in a secure room at New Scotland Yard. Commander Whitmore presented the facts as they knew them, while Matthews took careful notes. The missing coronation robe was valued at over £2 million, not just for its materials, but for its historical significance. It had been worn by monarchs for centuries and represented an irreplaceable piece of British heritage. The robe had disappeared during a routine inventory check at the Tower of London. Security cameras had shown no unauthorized access, and all staff members had been thoroughly investigated. The case had gone cold, with investigators suspecting an inside job, but unable to identify the perpetrator. Now, 6 months later, an anonymous caller was claiming it could be found in the home of the future queen consort. Matthews understood the gravity of the situation. If the allegations were true, it would create a constitutional crisis that could shake the foundation of the monarchy. If they were false, the investigation itself could cause irreparable damage to Camilla's reputation and standing within the royal family. Either way, the matter required immediate and careful attention. The decision was made to obtain a search warrant, but the process was complicated by the target status. Special protocols existed for searching royal residences, requiring approval from the highest levels of government. The Home Secretary was briefed, and, after consultation with the Prime Minister's office, authorization was granted for a discreet search of Clarence House. The search was scheduled for the following morning when the Duchess would be attending a scheduled engagement in Scotland. This timing would minimize embarrassment and allow the investigation to proceed without creating a media circus. A small team of specialist officers was assembled, each sworn to absolute secrecy about the operation. Meanwhile, palace staff at Clarence House noticed unusual activity in the security office. Additional guards were positioned at key points around the residence, and several staff members were given unexpected days off. The Duchess's private secretary, Margaret Thornton, sensed something was amiss, but was told only that enhanced security measures were being implemented due to a general threat assessment. As evening approached, Commander Whitmore reviewed the search plan one final time. The team would focus on the Duchess's private quarters, particularly her dressing room and personal wardrobe areas. The anonymous caller had specifically mentioned a hidden compartment behind the main wardrobe in the master bedroom, accessible through a panel that appeared to be part of the original woodwork. Detective Inspector Matthews spent the evening researching the missing coronation robe and other artifacts that might be connected to the case. The robe was made of purple velvet and ermine, decorated with gold thread embroidery depicting the royal coat of arms. It measured approximately 6 feet in length and required special storage conditions to preserve its ancient fabrics. The historical significance of the robe could not be overstated. It had been worn during the coronation ceremonies of 8 different monarchs, dating back to the reign of George IV. Each monarch had added personal touches to the garment, creating a layered history that made it one of the most important pieces in the royal collection. As Matthews prepared for the search, she couldn't help but wonder about the motivation behind the anonymous tip. Was it a genuine attempt to recover stolen property, or was someone trying to frame the Duchess for political or personal reasons? The timing seemed suspicious, coming just as public opinion polls showed increasing support for Camilla following her years of dedicated service to various charities and causes. The Duchess had worked hard to overcome the controversy surrounding her relationship with Prince Charles and her role in the breakdown of his marriage to Princess Diana. Over the years, she had gradually won public acceptance through her commitment to numerous charitable organizations and her dignified approach to royal duties. A scandal of this magnitude could undo years of careful reputation building. The night before the search, Matthews received additional intelligence from Whitmore's team. Palace security had been quietly investigating recent visitors to Clarence House, looking for anyone who might have had access to the Duchess's private quarters. The list included staff members, contractors, and personal friends who had been guests in recent months. One name stood out: Lady Victoria Pemberton, a longtime friend of the Duchess who had stayed at Clarence House for several weeks during the winter months. Lady Pemberton had recently been investigated by police in connection with an art fraud case, though charges had never been filed due to insufficient evidence. Her presence in the house during the time when the Coronation Robe went missing seemed more than coincidental. Further investigation revealed that Lady Pemberton had financial troubles. Her husband's death 3 years earlier had left her with substantial debts and a lifestyle she could no longer afford. She had been forced to sell several family heirlooms and downsize her living arrangements. The financial pressure might have provided motivation for theft, especially if she believed she could sell stolen royal artifacts to private collectors who wouldn't ask questions about provenance. The security team also discovered that Lady Pemberton had expressed interest in the Duchess's royal collection during her stay. Staff members reported that she had asked detailed questions about various pieces and had been found in areas of the house where guests typically weren't permitted. At the time, these incidents had been attributed to curiosity rather than anything more sinister. As the search team made final preparations, Matthews reviewed the legal implications of what they might discover. If the missing robe was found in Camilla's possession, it would raise questions about her knowledge of its origin. The Duchess would need to provide a reasonable explanation for how royal property came to be in her private collection, assuming she was unaware of any theft. The possibility that Camilla herself might be involved in the theft seemed remote to most investigators, but it couldn't be entirely dismissed. Her position gave her access to royal collections, and she would have detailed knowledge of security procedures at various royal residences. However, her motivation for such a crime was unclear, given her secure position within the royal family and access to legitimate royal regalia. More likely scenarios involved theft by someone with access to her residence who then planted the evidence to implicate her. This could be part of a broader scheme to embarrass the royal family or to divert attention from the real perpetrator. The timing of the anonymous tip, coming months after the initial theft, suggested careful planning and possibly political motivation. The search warrant specified exactly which areas of Clarence House could be examined and what items could be seized as evidence. The scope was deliberately narrow to minimize intrusion while still allowing a thorough investigation of the areas mentioned by the anonymous caller. Photographs would be taken of any suspicious items, and chain of custody procedures would be strictly followed to ensure evidence remained admissible in court. As midnight approached, final security checks were completed around Clarence House. The search would begin at dawn, giving the team several hours to conduct a thorough examination before the Duchess returned from Scotland. Commander Whitmore reviewed contingency plans for various scenarios, including procedures if the media discovered the investigation or if additional evidence of criminal activity was uncovered. The weight of responsibility felt heavy on Detective Inspector Matthews' shoulders as she prepared for what could be the most significant case of her career. The next morning would either clear the Duchess of any wrongdoing or reveal a scandal that could change the course of British royal history. Either way, the truth had to be discovered, regardless of the consequences for the individuals involved. The investigation had already revealed connections and coincidences that raised serious questions about the security of royal collections and the vulnerability of the monarchy to internal threats. Whatever the search revealed, it was clear that significant changes would need to be made to prevent similar incidents in the future. The reputation of the royal family and the security of priceless national treasures hung in the balance as the team prepared for their morning mission. Dawn broke gray and overcast as Detective Inspector Matthews arrived at Clarence's house. The morning air carried a chill that seemed to penetrate straight through her professional composure. 6 specialist officers accompanied her, each carrying equipment designed for discreet searches of high-security locations. They moved with practiced silence through the service entrance, guided by Commander Whitmore and 2 trusted palace security personnel. The interior of Clarence's house revealed itself in the soft morning light filtering through tall windows. Elegant furniture and priceless artwork created an atmosphere of refined luxury that spoke of centuries of royal tradition. Matthews had visited other royal residences during her career, but the personal touches in Camilla's home made this search feel more invasive than usual. The team proceeded directly to the master bedroom, located on the 2nd floor overlooking the private gardens. The room was spacious yet intimate, decorated in warm colors that reflected the Duchess's personal taste rather than formal royal protocol. Family photographs sat on antique tables, and books were stacked on nightstands, creating a lived-in feeling that contrasted sharply with the formal staterooms downstairs. The focus of their attention was an enormous mahogany wardrobe that dominated one wall of the bedroom. The piece appeared to be an original fixture from the house's construction in the 1820s, with intricate carved details and brass hardware that had been polished to a mirror finish. According to the anonymous caller, a hidden compartment lay concealed behind the wardrobe's back panel. Specialist Officer Robert Chun, an expert in detecting concealed spaces and hidden compartments, began his examination of the wardrobe structure. His equipment included electronic scanners capable of detecting variations in wall thickness and hollow spaces that might not be visible to the naked eye. The work required patience and precision to avoid damaging the antique furniture while conducting a thorough investigation. After 20 minutes of careful scanning, Chun discovered what they had come looking for. The wardrobe's back panel contained a section that was significantly thinner than the surrounding wood, suggesting a hidden compartment approximately 2 feet wide and 4 feet tall. More importantly, his thermal imaging equipment detected a temperature differential that indicated the space behind the panel was not empty. Matthews felt her pulse quicken as Chun prepared to open the concealed compartment. The legal implications of whatever they found would be enormous, but her professional duty required her to pursue the investigation regardless of personal feelings about the Duchess or the royal family. She positioned herself to document everything with both photographs and detailed written notes. The hidden panel opened with surprising ease, suggesting it had been used recently. Inside, wrapped in what appeared to be museum-quality preservation materials, hung a garment that matched the exact description of Queen Elizabeth II's missing coronation robe. The purple velvet and ermine were unmistakable, as was the gold thread embroidery depicting the royal coat of arms. But the coronation robe was not alone. The compartment contained several other items that appeared to be part of the royal collection. A diamond tiara that Matthews recognized from photographs of state occasions sat on a custom-made stand. Several pieces of antique jewelry lay in individual silk-lined boxes, each piece carefully cataloged and stored with professional attention to preservation. Most disturbing was a leather-bound ledger that documented each item in the hidden collection. The handwriting was feminine and precise, recording not just descriptions of each piece, but also their historical significance and estimated value. Some entries included dates and locations, suggesting a systematic collection process that had been ongoing for months or possibly years. Officer Chin photographed each item in its original position before the team began the careful process of removing evidence from the compartment. The preservation materials and storage methods suggested someone with extensive knowledge of artifact conservation, pointing toward either professional expertise or careful research into proper collection care. Matthews opened the leather ledger with gloved hands, scanning the detailed entries that filled page after page. The earliest date recorded was 3 years earlier, long before the recent theft from the Tower of London. This discovery suggested the missing coronation robe was part of a much larger pattern of theft that had gone undetected for years. The entries revealed a sophisticated understanding of royal protocol and collection management. Items were described using technical terminology that would be familiar to museum curators or royal collection specialists. Storage conditions were noted with scientific precision, including temperature and humidity requirements for different materials. This level of detail suggested someone with professional training or extensive experience in artifact preservation. One entry particularly caught Matthew's attention. It described a ceremonial sword that had reportedly been damaged during a public exhibition and removed from display for restoration. According to the ledger, the sword had been rescued from improper restoration and was now safely preserved in climate-controlled conditions. The implication was that items were being taken not for financial gain, but for preservation purposes. Commander Whitmore examined several pieces of jewelry, comparing them to photographs from palace security files. Each item he inspected proved to be authentic royal property that had been reported missing at various times over the past 3 years. The pattern suggested someone with regular access to royal residences and detailed knowledge of security procedures. The team discovered additional evidence that pointed toward the scale of the operation. Hidden within the compartment were detailed floor plans of several royal residences, including Windsor Castle, Buckingham Palace, and the Tower of London. Security schedules and staff rotation patterns were noted in the margins, suggesting careful planning and inside knowledge of palace operations. More damaging still were photographs that appeared to document the theft process. The images showed various royal artifacts in their original locations before being removed, suggesting the thief was creating a visual record of their activities. Some photographs included timestamp data that correlated with dates when items were reported missing from royal collections. Matthews realized she was looking at evidence of the most sophisticated theft operation in the history of the British monarchy. The perpetrator had not simply stolen valuable items, but had created a parallel royal collection, complete with professional documentation and preservation standards. The scope and organization suggested this was not the work of a casual opportunist, but of someone with deep knowledge and substantial resources. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Officer Sarah Patel discovered a second hidden compartment within the first. This smaller space contained personal correspondence that revealed the emotional motivation behind the thefts. Letters written in the same feminine handwriting as the ledger expressed deep concern about the security and preservation of royal artifacts. The correspondence revealed a person who genuinely believed they were protecting national treasures from inadequate security and improper handling. Several letters described witnessing casual treatment of priceless artifacts by palace staff and expressed frustration with what the writer perceived as institutional negligence toward cultural heritage preservation. One particularly revealing letter, dated just 2 weeks earlier, expressed regret about the actions taken but insisted that future generations will understand the necessity of preserving our national heritage when official channels fail in their duty. The letter was signed with the initial V, providing the first concrete link to Lady Victoria Pemberton. Further examination of the correspondence revealed Lady Pemberton's growing obsession with royal artifacts and her increasing conviction that official preservation methods were inadequate. She had apparently begun taking items with the intention of providing better care than they received in official royal collections. What started as concern for preservation had evolved into a systematic theft operation. The letters also revealed Lady Pemberton's financial desperation and her plan to eventually sell the stolen items to private collectors who would appreciate their historical significance. She had made contact with several international buyers through discreet channels, planning to market the items as legitimate acquisitions from a private royal collection. Matthews discovered that Lady Pemberton had used her friendship with Camilla to gain access to multiple royal residences over the years. The Duchess had apparently been unaware of her friend's activities, instead viewing her frequent visits and interest in royal collections as normal curiosity from a longtime companion who shared her appreciation for history and tradition. The evidence suggested that Lady Pemberton had been using Camilla's residence as a storage facility, taking advantage of the security and privacy that came with royal protection to hide her growing collection of stolen artifacts. The hidden compartment had been constructed during renovation work that Lady Pemberton had volunteered to oversee while the Duchess was traveling abroad. As the team continued their methodical documentation of evidence, they uncovered additional details about Lady Pemberton's methods. She had created false documentation for several items, including certificates of authenticity and insurance appraisals that would allow her to sell stolen artifacts as legitimate antiques. The sophistication of these forgeries suggested collaboration with other criminals experienced in art fraud. The financial records hidden in the compartment revealed the scope of Lady Pemberton's debts and her desperate need for income. Her late husband's gambling losses had left her with obligations to dangerous creditors who were demanding immediate payment. The theft operation was apparently motivated as much by fear as by greed, with Lady Pemberton believing she had no alternative to criminal activity. Commander Whitmore reviewed security footage from various royal residences, looking for evidence of Lady Pemberton's activities during her visits. The recordings revealed a pattern of behavior that, in retrospect, appeared suspicious but had been dismissed at the time as normal guest conduct. She had shown unusual interest in staff schedules, security procedures, and collection storage areas. The investigation revealed significant vulnerabilities in royal security protocols that had allowed the theft operation to continue undetected for years. Lady Pemberton's status as a trusted friend of the royal family had given her access that would have been denied to ordinary visitors. Her knowledge of palace routines and staff personalities had allowed her to time her activities to avoid detection. Matthews began preparing for the difficult task of confronting Lady Pemberton with the evidence, while also ensuring the Duchess was properly informed about the situation before news of the investigation became public. The political implications of the discovery would require careful management to avoid damage to the monarchy's reputation and public confidence in royal security. As the search concluded, the team had recovered over 30 stolen artifacts worth an estimated £15 million. The discovery represented the largest theft from royal collections in modern history and would necessitate a complete review of security procedures at all royal residences. The hidden compartment in Camilla's wardrobe had yielded far more evidence than anyone had anticipated, transforming what might have been a simple recovery operation into a complex investigation with international implications. The secure telephone line at Balmoral Castle rang at precisely 11:30 a.m., interrupting what should have been a peaceful morning for the Duchess of Cornwall. Camilla had been reviewing her afternoon schedule with her private secretary when Commander Whitmore's call came through, requesting an immediate private conversation about urgent security matters at Clarence House. The Duchess felt a cold knot form in her stomach as she listened to Whitmore's carefully measured words. Years of royal life had taught her to read between the lines of diplomatic language, and the commander's tone suggested something far more serious than routine security concerns. When he mentioned the discovery of stolen royal artifacts in her private quarters, she felt the room begin to spin around her. Margaret Thornton, her private secretary, immediately cleared the room and activated privacy protocols while Camilla absorbed the shocking news. The discovery of Queen Elizabeth II's missing coronation robe in her own wardrobe seemed impossible, like something from a nightmare rather than reality. She struggled to understand how such priceless artifacts could have appeared in her home without her knowledge. The initial shock gave way to practical concerns as Camilla realized the potential consequences. Her position as future queen consort made her a target for various forms of attack, but she had never imagined being implicated in theft from the royal collection. The irony that she might be accused of stealing the very regalia she would one day wear in official ceremonies was not lost on her. Commander Whitmore's explanation about Lady Victoria Pemberton's suspected involvement brought a mixture of relief and betrayal. Victoria had been a trusted friend for over 20 years, someone who had provided emotional support during some of the most difficult periods of Camilla's life. The idea that this friendship had been exploited for criminal purposes felt like a personal violation beyond the institutional damage. The Duchess recalled Victoria's behavior during her recent extended stay at Clarence House. What she had interpreted as natural interest in royal history and artifacts now took on a sinister significance. Victoria's detailed questions about security procedures, staff schedules, and collection storage had seemed like normal curiosity from an old friend who shared her appreciation for British heritage. Camilla remembered Victoria volunteering to oversee renovation work in the master bedroom while she had been traveling in Australia the previous summer. The project had involved updating the electrical systems and replacing some wall paneling, work that would have provided perfect cover for installing the hidden compartment. Victoria's expertise in historical preservation had made her seem like the ideal person to ensure the work was done with appropriate care for the antique furnishings. The financial pressures that had apparently motivated Victoria's crimes explained some recent changes in her friend's behavior. Victoria had seemed increasingly anxious during recent visits, making cryptic comments about money troubles and asking unusual questions about the value of various royal artifacts. At the time, Camilla had attributed these conversations to natural curiosity mixed with the stress of widowhood and financial adjustment. Detective Inspector Matthews' team needed to interview the Duchess immediately to establish her alibi for times when various thefts had occurred and to gather information about Lady Pemberton's access to royal residences. The interview would need to be conducted with extreme discretion to avoid media attention while the investigation continued. The logistics of conducting a formal police interview with a senior member of the royal family required careful coordination between multiple agencies. The interview would take place at Balmoral Castle with appropriate legal representation present, but the questioning would be thorough and professional regardless of the Duchess's status. Matthews understood that treating Camilla differently than any other witness would compromise the investigation's credibility. Camilla's legal team was assembled within hours, including specialists in both criminal defense and constitutional law. The unique legal position of senior royals created complications that required expert navigation to protect both the Duchess's rights and the integrity of the investigation. The interview strategy needed to account for potential constitutional issues while establishing the facts necessary for prosecution. The Duchess spent the afternoon reviewing her travel schedules and social calendar for the past 3 years, trying to identify when Lady Pemberton had access to Clarence House and other royal residences. The pattern that emerged was troubling, showing that Victoria had been present at or near times when numerous artifacts had gone missing from various collections. Her personal diary revealed multiple occasions when Victoria had stayed at Clarence House for extended periods, often volunteering to help with various projects or events. The Duchess had appreciated what seemed like generous assistance from a loyal friend, never suspecting that these visits were cover for systematic theft operations. The emotional impact of the betrayal was almost as difficult to process as the legal implications. Camilla had trusted Victoria with intimate details of royal family life, shared confidences about personal relationships, and even sought advice about her role as Prince Charles's wife. The revelation that this trusted confidant had been systematically stealing from the royal collection felt like a fundamental violation of everything their friendship had represented. Prince Charles was informed of the situation while attending an environmental conference in Edinburgh. His immediate concern was for Camilla's well-being and the potential impact on her reputation, but he also recognized the broader implications for royal security and public confidence in the monarchy. The prince arranged to return to Balmoral immediately to provide support during the investigation. The media management aspect of the crisis required careful planning by the palace press office. News of the investigation would inevitably leak, and they needed to be prepared with a strategy that protected the Duchess while allowing the police investigation to proceed without interference. The challenge was explaining how royal artifacts could appear in a royal residence without implying wrongdoing by the residents themselves. Queen Elizabeth II was briefed about the situation during her afternoon tea, receiving the news with the composed demeanor that had characterized her response to countless crises over her long reign. Her primary concern was ensuring that justice was served while minimizing damage to the institution of monarchy. She instructed that the investigation should proceed without regard to rank or position, emphasizing that the royal family was not above the law. The legal complexities extended beyond criminal liability to questions of constitutional law and royal privilege. Legal experts debated whether certain aspects of the investigation could be protected by royal immunity, but both the palace and the investigating team agreed that full cooperation was essential to maintain public confidence in both the monarchy and the justice system. Lady Victoria Pemberton was located at her London residence, apparently unaware that her theft operation had been discovered. Surveillance teams positioned themselves discreetly around her property while investigators prepared arrest warrants and search authorizations for her home and any other properties she might have used for storing stolen artifacts. The psychological profile that emerged of Lady Pemberton revealed a complex individual whose crimes appeared to stem from a combination of financial desperation, genuine concern for artifact preservation, and possibly an unhealthy obsession with royal life. Her background in art history and conservation provided the knowledge necessary to properly care for stolen items, but it also enabled her to rationalize theft as preservation. Financial records obtained through court orders revealed the extent of Lady Pemberton's debts and the increasing pressure she faced from creditors. Her late husband's gambling problems had left her with obligations to individuals who were not patient about repayment. The theft operation appears to have been motivated as much by fear as by greed, with stolen artifacts providing both immediate cash through sales and longer-term security through their increasing value. The investigation expanded to include international art dealers and collectors who might have purchased stolen royal artifacts. Several items from Lady Pemberton's detailed inventory were traced to private collections in other countries, suggesting a sophisticated network for selling stolen cultural property. This discovery transformed a domestic theft case into an international investigation involving multiple law enforcement agencies. Forensic examination of the hidden compartment revealed fingerprints and DNA evidence that confirmed Lady Pemberton's involvement while clearing the Duchess of any direct participation in the thefts. The construction of the compartment had been done with professional skill, suggesting either specialized knowledge or assistance from individuals experienced in creating concealed storage spaces. The Duchess's interview with Detective Inspector Matthews took place in the library at Balmoral Castle, a room chosen for its privacy and dignity. Despite the formal nature of the questioning, Matthews was struck by Camilla's genuine shock and distress about the betrayal by her longtime friend. The Duchess answered questions with careful honesty, providing detailed information about Lady Pemberton's access to royal residences and her behavior during visits. The interview revealed the extent to which Lady Pemberton had manipulated her friendship with the Duchess to gain access to royal collections. She had apparently studied security procedures during social visits, memorized staff schedules, and even photographed various artifacts under the guise of admiring their beauty or historical significance. The systematic nature of her intelligence gathering suggested extensive planning and possibly professional assistance. Camilla's recollections helped investigators understand how the theft operation had remained undetected for so long. Lady Pemberton's status as a trusted friend had given her access to areas of royal residences that would be off-limits to ordinary visitors. Her apparent expertise in art and history had made her questions about collections seem natural rather than suspicious. The investigation timeline revealed that the thefts had escalated significantly in recent months, possibly due to increasing pressure from creditors or opportunities created by renovations and staff changes at various royal residences. The pattern suggested that Lady Pemberton had become increasingly desperate and careless, ultimately leading to the anonymous tip that exposed her operation. As evening approached, the full scope of Lady Pemberton's betrayal became clear. She had not only stolen priceless artifacts, but had violated the trust of someone who had considered her a genuine friend. The personal dimension of the crime added an emotional complexity that went far beyond the financial and institutional damage caused by the thefts. The Duchess faced the difficult task of informing other members of the royal family about the investigation and its implications. The discovery would require a complete review of security procedures at all royal residences and would likely result in restrictions on guest access to sensitive areas. The balance between maintaining royal hospitality and protecting national treasures would need to be carefully recalibrated. Lady Victoria Pemberton was arrested at her Belgravia townhouse at dawn on Thursday morning, exactly 48 hours after the discovery at Clarence House. She answered the door in her silk dressing gown, her composed demeanor cracking only slightly when Detective Inspector Matthews introduced herself and explained the reason for the visit. The arrest was conducted with the discreet efficiency that characterized all aspects of this sensitive investigation. The search of Lady Pemberton's residence revealed the full extent of her criminal enterprise. Her study had been converted into a sophisticated documentation center, complete with professional photography equipment, cataloging software, and detailed research files on royal collections dating back decades. Computer records showed she had been planning the theft operation for nearly 5 years, studying security procedures and identifying vulnerable targets with methodical precision. Hidden in her basement were storage facilities that rivaled those found in major museums. Climate-controlled display cases held artifacts that had been missing from various royal collections, each piece carefully maintained in pristine condition. The setup suggested someone who genuinely cared about preserving cultural heritage, even as she violated every legal and ethical principle of collection management. Financial documents discovered during the search revealed the complex web of debt that had apparently driven Lady Pemberton to crime. Her late husband's gambling addiction had left obligations to dangerous individuals who charged enormous interest rates and used intimidation tactics to ensure payment. Several threatening letters demanded immediate settlement of debts totaling over £3 million. The investigation into her financial situation revealed that Lady Pemberton had initially borrowed money to maintain her lifestyle after her husband's death, believing she could manage the debt through careful budgeting and the sale of family heirlooms. However, the high interest rates and compounding penalties had created a spiral of increasing obligation that legitimate income could never satisfy. Bank records showed she had been selling stolen artifacts through a network of international dealers who specialized in acquiring items with questionable provenance. The buyers were primarily wealthy collectors who valued exclusivity over legitimacy, willing to pay premium prices for pieces that could never be publicly displayed or resold through conventional channels. Lady Pemberton's arrest triggered a complex international investigation as law enforcement agencies in multiple countries worked to trace stolen royal artifacts that had been sold to private collectors. Interpol coordinated efforts to recover items that had been transported across borders, while diplomatic channels were activated to secure cooperation from jurisdictions that might normally resist such investigations. The emotional toll on the Duchess of Cornwall became evident during a private meeting with Queen Elizabeth II at Windsor Castle. The two women discussed the personal betrayal and its implications for royal security procedures, with the Queen offering both practical guidance and personal support during this difficult period. The conversation remained private, but observers noted the Duchess appeared particularly subdued in the days following the arrest. Prince Charles struggled with his own feelings about the situation, torn between anger at the betrayal and concern for his wife's emotional well-being. He had known Lady Pemberton for years through her friendship with Camilla and had occasionally included her in social gatherings and charitable events. The idea that she had been systematically stealing from his family's collection while enjoying their hospitality felt like a fundamental violation of trust. The media response to news of the arrest was intense, but carefully managed by palace communications specialists. The initial statements emphasized that the Duchess of Cornwall was a victim of betrayal rather than a suspect in criminal activity, while expressing confidence in the ongoing police investigation. The challenge was providing enough information to satisfy public interest while protecting the integrity of legal proceedings. Public reaction was largely sympathetic to the Duchess, with many commentators noting the difficulty of detecting criminal activity by trusted friends and associates. However, some critics questioned the security procedures that had allowed such extensive theft to continue undetected for years. The incident sparked broader discussions about the protection of national cultural heritage and the accountability of those responsible for safeguarding historical artifacts. Lady Pemberton's first court appearance drew significant media attention despite attempts to manage coverage through discreet scheduling and restricted access. She appeared composed but visibly aged, wearing simple black clothing that contrasted sharply with the elegant designer outfits she had favored during her years as a prominent social figure. Her legal team entered a plea of not guilty to all charges, setting up what promised to be a lengthy and complex trial. The psychological evaluation ordered by the court revealed a complex portrait of someone whose crimes appeared to stem from a combination of financial desperation, genuine concern for artifact preservation, and an obsessive fascination with royal life. The evaluator noted that Lady Pemberton seemed to genuinely believe she had been protecting national treasures rather than stealing them, suggesting a degree of self-delusion that might indicate underlying mental health issues. During police interviews, Lady Pemberton expressed remorse for betraying Camilla's friendship, but maintained that her actions had been necessary to protect artifacts from what she perceived as inadequate official care. She provided detailed information about her methods and contacts, apparently hoping that cooperation would result in more lenient treatment. Her revelations led to additional arrests and the recovery of several more stolen items. The recovery operation expanded internationally as investigators followed the trail of sold artifacts to collections in Monaco, Switzerland, and several other countries known for their discreet banking systems and wealthy collectors. The process of recovering stolen cultural property proved complicated by varying international laws and the reluctance of some buyers to acknowledge possession of questionable items. Forensic accountants working on the case discovered that Lady Pemberton had been increasingly desperate in recent months, selling items at below-market prices to generate quick cash for debt payments. This desperation had led to mistakes that ultimately exposed her operation, including selling a distinctive piece to a dealer who had connections to law enforcement investigations of art fraud. The investigation revealed vulnerabilities in royal security that went beyond simple access control to include broader issues of trust verification and ongoing monitoring of individuals with special privileges. The Palace Security Review identified numerous procedures that needed updating to address threats from trusted insiders who might exploit their access for criminal purposes. Commander Whitmore presented his findings to a special security committee that included representatives from multiple government agencies and law enforcement organizations. The recommendations included enhanced background checks for individuals granted extended access to royal residences, improved inventory controls for valuable collections, and better coordination between security teams at different royal properties. The emotional impact on staff at royal residences was significant, as longtime employees struggled with the realization that someone they had known and trusted for years had been systematically stealing from their employers. Many expressed guilt about not recognizing the signs of criminal activity, despite the sophisticated nature of Lady Pemberton's operation and her careful efforts to appear legitimate. The Duchess of Cornwall began the difficult process of rebuilding trust in her social circle, aware that the betrayal by Lady Pemberton might make her more cautious about forming close friendships in the future. She consulted with security experts about ways to maintain normal social relationships while protecting against similar exploitation, recognizing that complete isolation was neither practical nor desirable for someone in her position. Legal experts following the case noted that the prosecution would face challenges in proving some charges due to the sophisticated methods Lady Pemberton had used to obscure the timing and methods of various thefts. However, the physical evidence recovered from both Clarence House and her own residence provided compelling proof of her criminal activity, making conviction on major charges highly likely. The insurance implications of the thefts proved complex, as many of the stolen items were covered by specialized policies that had never anticipated this type of insider threat. Insurance investigators worked closely with police to establish the full scope of losses and to identify any gaps in coverage that might require additional compensation from government funds designated for protecting national heritage. International law enforcement cooperation revealed that Lady Pemberton's operation was part of a broader pattern of cultural heritage theft that had been increasing in recent years. Wealthy collectors were apparently willing to pay premium prices for items with royal provenance, creating a lucrative market for stolen artifacts that encouraged sophisticated criminal operations. The trial preparation phase revealed additional evidence of Lady Pemberton's criminal activities, including correspondence with potential buyers who were clearly aware that the items they were purchasing had been stolen. Several international arrest warrants were issued for individuals who had knowingly purchased stolen royal artifacts, expanding the case into a major international cultural heritage investigation. The discovery also prompted a comprehensive review of collection management practices at all royal residences, with particular attention to access controls and inventory procedures. The review identified several areas where improvements could be made without significantly impacting the royal family's ability to maintain their traditional hospitality and public engagement. As the investigation continued, the full scale of Lady Pemberton's betrayal became increasingly clear, transforming what had initially appeared to be a simple case of theft into a complex international investigation with implications for cultural heritage protection worldwide. The case would ultimately lead to significant changes in how royal collections were protected and managed, ensuring that similar betrayals would be much more difficult to accomplish in the future. 6 months after Lady Victoria Pemberton's arrest, the Old Bailey courtroom was packed with observers as the trial that had captivated the nation finally began. The prosecution, led by Sir Geoffrey Hammond QC, presented a methodical case that traced Lady Pemberton's criminal activities from their earliest beginnings through to the dramatic discovery at Clarence House. The evidence was overwhelming, but the defense team mounted an innovative strategy that would challenge conventional understanding of theft and preservation. The Duchess of Cornwall had initially been scheduled to testify in person, but security concerns and the emotional strain of facing her former friend led to arrangements for video testimony from a secure location at Buckingham Palace. Her testimony was dignified but clearly painful, describing the sense of betrayal she felt upon learning that someone she had trusted completely had systematically stolen from her family's collection while accepting their hospitality and friendship. The most dramatic moment of the trial came when Lady Pemberton herself took the stand, speaking publicly for the first time about her motivations and methods. Her testimony revealed a woman who had convinced herself that she was protecting national treasures rather than stealing them, genuinely believing that royal collection management was inadequate and that private preservation was necessary to ensure artifacts survived for future generations. Lady Pemberton's defense attorney, Marcus Blackwood, argued that his client's actions constituted misguided preservation rather than criminal theft, noting the exceptional care she had taken to maintain artifacts in pristine condition. He presented expert testimony from conservation specialists who acknowledged that the storage conditions in Lady Pemberton's basement had actually exceeded official royal collection standards in several important respects. The prosecution countered by emphasizing that good intentions could not excuse criminal behavior and that Lady Pemberton's financial motivations undermined any claims of pure preservation interest. Bank records showed she had sold several artifacts for substantial sums, using the proceeds to pay debts rather than investing in better preservation equipment or returning items to their rightful owners. Expert testimony from royal collection curators revealed the sophisticated security and preservation systems already in place at various royal residences, contradicting Lady Pemberton's claims that official care was inadequate. The curators described extensive climate control systems, professional conservation staff, and regular maintenance programs that exceeded international standards for cultural heritage preservation. The financial evidence presented by forensic accountants painted a clear picture of someone who had initially been motivated by genuine preservation concerns but had gradually shifted toward using theft as a solution to personal financial problems. The timeline showed increasing desperation as her debts compounded, leading to more frequent thefts and riskier sales to questionable buyers. International law enforcement officers testified about the network of dealers and collectors who had purchased stolen royal artifacts, revealing a sophisticated market for cultural property with questionable provenance. Several buyers had been arrested in various countries, though some remained beyond the reach of British law enforcement due to jurisdictional complications and diplomatic protections. The psychological evaluation that had been conducted during the pretrial period became a central element of the defense strategy. Dr. Sarah Wellington, a forensic psychiatrist, testified that Lady Pemberton suffered from a complex combination of anxiety, depression, and obsessive tendencies that had been exacerbated by financial stress and grief over her husband's death. The evaluation suggested that her criminal behavior represented a psychological coping mechanism rather than simple greed. The prosecution's rebuttal emphasized that mental health issues could not excuse criminal behavior and that Lady Pemberton had demonstrated clear understanding of right and wrong throughout her activities. The sophisticated planning and careful documentation of her thefts indicated someone who was fully aware of the criminal nature of her actions, regardless of any psychological factors that might have influenced her motivations. Public opinion polls conducted during the trial showed a complex response to Lady Pemberton's case, with many people expressing sympathy for her financial situation while condemning the betrayal of trust she had perpetrated against the royal family. The case had sparked broader discussions about wealth inequality, the pressures faced by people struggling to maintain middle-class lifestyles, and the accessibility of mental health resources for those in crisis. The Duchess of Cornwall's public appearances during the trial period were carefully managed to project confidence and normalcy while the legal proceedings continued. She maintained her regular schedule of charitable engagements and public duties, though observers noted a more cautious approach to social interactions and a tendency to keep personal conversations more superficial than had been her previous custom. Prince Charles provided steadfast support for his wife throughout the trial period, often accompanying her to public events and ensuring she had access to whatever emotional and practical support she needed. The prince had initially struggled with anger over the betrayal, but gradually shifted toward a more philosophical acceptance that criminal behavior by others did not reflect on their family's judgment or character. The international recovery operation had succeeded in returning most of the stolen artifacts to royal collections, though several pieces remained missing and might never be recovered. The process had revealed concerning gaps in international law regarding cultural heritage protection and had prompted calls for stronger treaties governing the theft and sale of national treasures. Security improvements implemented at all royal residences during the investigation had proven effective, but had also changed the atmosphere of royal hospitality in ways that concerned some family members. The balance between accessibility and security remained an ongoing challenge, with new procedures requiring careful implementation to avoid alienating legitimate guests and supporters. The trial's conclusion came after 3 weeks of testimony and deliberation. Lady Victoria Pemberton was found guilty on 18 counts of theft, 3 counts of handling stolen goods, and 2 counts of money laundering. The jury rejected the defense argument that preservation concerns justified her actions, but they did acknowledge the psychological factors that had contributed to her criminal behavior. The sentencing hearing revealed the full human cost of Lady Pemberton's crimes beyond the financial value of stolen artifacts. Victim impact statements from royal staff members described their feelings of betrayal and the difficulty of rebuilding trust after such a violation. The Duchess of Cornwall's written statement spoke eloquently about the personal pain of discovering that a cherished friendship had been built on deception. Judge Sir William Ashworth sentenced Lady Pemberton to 8 years in prison, noting that while he acknowledged the psychological factors that had contributed to her crimes, the systematic nature of her theft operation and the breach of trust involved required substantial punishment. He also ordered full restitution for the value of artifacts that had not been recovered, though the practical likelihood of payment remained doubtful given her financial situation. The aftermath of the trial saw significant changes in how royal collections were managed and protected. New procedures required enhanced background checks for anyone granted extended access to royal residences, while improved inventory systems made it much more difficult for items to disappear without immediate detection. The changes struck a careful balance between security and the traditional openness of royal hospitality. The Duchess of Cornwall gradually rebuilt her confidence in social relationships, though she maintained more formal boundaries with new acquaintances than had been her previous practice. The experience had taught her painful lessons about the potential for exploitation of trust, but it had also demonstrated the strength of her marriage and her ability to weather severe personal challenges with dignity. Lady Pemberton's imprisonment marked the end of one of the most significant theft cases in royal history, but the broader implications continued to resonate. The case had revealed vulnerabilities in cultural heritage protection that extended beyond royal collections to museums and private collections worldwide. New security standards were adopted internationally, improving protection for irreplaceable artifacts everywhere. The anonymous tipster who had initiated the investigation was never identified, despite extensive efforts by law enforcement. Some speculated it might have been someone within Lady Pemberton's network of dealers who had become concerned about the heat that royal thefts might bring to their operations. Others suggested it might have been a palace insider who had noticed suspicious patterns but preferred to report them anonymously rather than risk being wrong about their suspicions. The recovery of Queen Elizabeth II's Coronation Robe became a symbol of the investigation's success, with the artifact returned to its proper place in the royal collection after extensive conservation work to ensure it had suffered no damage during its months in hiding. The robe would eventually be worn again during important state ceremonies, its temporary absence becoming part of its historical legacy. The case established important legal precedents regarding the prosecution of cultural heritage crimes and the recovery of stolen artifacts from international buyers. The cooperation between law enforcement agencies in multiple countries demonstrated the effectiveness of coordinated responses to cultural property theft, encouraging similar cooperation in future cases. Years later, the Pemberton case would be studied by security experts, law enforcement professionals, and cultural heritage specialists as an example of how trusted insiders could exploit their access for criminal purposes. The lessons learned from the investigation led to improved security protocols that protected countless irreplaceable artifacts from similar threats, ensuring that this particular type of betrayal would be much more difficult to accomplish in the future. The Duchess of Cornwall emerged from the ordeal with enhanced appreciation for the genuine friendships in her life and a deeper understanding of the responsibilities that came with her position as guardian of national treasures. While the betrayal had been painful, it had also demonstrated the resilience of both the monarchy as an institution and the individuals who served it with dignity and dedication.